The flashing red and blue lights reflected off the shiny black SUV as it rolled to a stop on a quiet suburban road. The woman inside, calm, composed, wearing a sharp navy suit, sighed softly. She had done nothing wrong, but she already knew what was coming. The cop swaggered up to her window, his sunglasses hiding his eyes but not his arrogance. "License and registration," he said flatly. "Yes, officer," she replied politely, handing them over. He looked her up and down, smirking. "You in a hurry? This isn't exactly the neighborhood for fancy cars like yours." She kept her tone even. "I'm just heading home from work." He leaned closer. "Work, huh? What kind of work pays for something like this?" "Federal," she answered simply. That one word made him pause, but only for a second. "Federal, right," he said mockingly. "You folks sure like throwing big words around." He circled the car slowly, tapping the taillight, pretending to inspect something. Then he bent down behind the bumper for a moment, out of her sight. When he came back up, his whole attitude had changed. "Ma'am," he said, pretending to sound concerned, "I'm going to need you to step out of the vehicle." She frowned. "Why?" "Because," he said, opening her door without permission, "you've got something illegal in your trunk." Her eyebrows shot up. "Excuse me." He motioned toward the back. "Cocaine. Big bag of it. Care to explain?" The woman stared at him, utterly calm, as if she already knew what was happening. "You found it that fast?" she asked quietly. He grinned, clearly enjoying his fake authority. "Let's just say I've got a good eye for criminals." She took a deep breath, her patience thinning. "You're making a mistake. Lady, I think you're the one who made a mistake." He reached for his radio. "Dispatch, I've got a 10 to 50, narcotics possession." "Stop." Her tone was sharp, commanding, the kind of voice that made soldiers freeze. He hesitated. She slowly reached into her jacket pocket, pulled out a black leather badge wallet, and flipped it open. The gold emblem inside gleamed in the sunlight. DEA Director Alicia Monroe. The officer's face went white. For a moment, he couldn't breathe. "DEA Director," he stammered, voice cracking. She stepped closer, her calm replaced with quiet fury. "You just planted evidence on a federal agent." His knees almost buckled. "Ma'am, I didn't know." "Oh, you knew exactly what you were doing," she said coldly. "You saw a black woman in a nice car and thought you could ruin her life for fun. Now it's your career on the line." He opened his mouth, but no words came out. She leaned in close, her badge inches from his trembling hand. "Here's what's going to happen," she said softly. "You're going to call your sergeant. You're going to tell him what you did. And you're going to pray your body cam is still recording, because if it's not, I'll make sure your next job involves handing out parking tickets in Alaska." The officer stood frozen, his hand shaking on the radio. "Now," she said, her voice icy calm, "let's see how the law feels when it's pointed back at you." The officer fumbled for his radio, voice cracking as he stammered to his sergeant, but Colonel Monroe didn't move. She watched him like someone waiting for a lesson to finish. "Turn your body cam on, now," she said quietly. He swallowed and hit the button, only to stare in horror as the screen showed a black, static line. He'd turned it off earlier, he lied. Before he could scramble for another excuse, two unmarked cars rolled up and a man in plain clothes walked out with an internal affairs badge flashing. "We pulled nearby traffic and patrol footage," the man said into his phone, calm as a judge. "And we have your hands on camera," bending the bag into the trunk. The crowd gasped, phones lifted higher, someone shouted, "He planted it." The officer's face went white, sweat ran down his neck. He took a step back, then another, as if the ground was giving way. Colonel Monroe stepped forward so close her voice was almost a whisper, "You just made a very bad choice, on the wrong person." The officer tried to plead, to blame stress, to say he'd mistaken the bag for trash, but the video played again on a tablet, clear as day. When the plainclothes agent clipped a pair of cuffs on him, Monroe didn't gloat. She looked straight into his eyes and said one line that would be on everyone's timeline by lunchtime: "You don't get to ruin lives and keep your badge." The officer's breathing turned shallow as the cold steel of the cuffs clicked shut around his wrists. His radio crackled uselessly on his shoulder while a small crowd gathered at the edge of the scene, drivers slowing down, cell phones raised, the story already spreading faster than he could process. Colonel Monroe stood tall, her badge still glinting in the afternoon sun. You know, she said evenly, I've spent my entire career chasing down cartels, drug runners, and dirty agents. But I never imagined the real rot would be hiding behind a patrol badge in my own city. He opened his mouth, trembling. I didn't mean to. Save it, she cut him off sharply. You didn't mean to get caught. The internal affairs agent handed her a digital tablet. Director, we've confirmed his prints on the evidence bag. We also found footage from a nearby security cam. It shows him planting the drugs behind the bumper before approaching the vehicle. The officer's face drained of all color. Please, I've got a family, he whispered, his voice cracking. Monroe's eyes softened slightly, but her tone stayed firm. And how many families have you destroyed doing this same thing? Silence. Just the hum of the patrol car's engine and the buzz of onlookers recording history. She turned to the DEA agent. Take him in. Full report to my office by morning. As they led him to the squad car, his knees nearly gave out. The same cuffs he'd once used to humiliate innocent people now bit into his own wrists. Before getting into her car, Monroe looked back one last time. Justice doesn't care about your badge, officer, she said, her voice calm but sharp as glass. Only about what you do with it. She slid into her SUV, started the engine, and drove off, the red and blue lights flashing in her rearview mirror as the once cocky cop sat slumped in the backseat, realizing the weight of what he'd done. By evening, the video hit every social platform. Cop plants cocaine on black woman, turns out she's the DEA director. Millions watched in disbelief. Thousands cheered. And for once, justice didn't just arrive, it walked right up, flashed a badge, and made the law answer to itself. By nightfall, the city was buzzing. News vans parked outside the precinct, reporters shouting over each other for a statement. The clip of Colonel Monroe's confrontation had gone viral, over 12 million views in 6 hours. Every channel replayed the same moment, the officer's stunned face when Monroe pulled out her DEA director badge. Inside the DEA headquarters, Monroe stood at the podium during a press conference. Behind her, the agency's seal gleamed on the wall, and a row of stern-faced officials watched in silence. She spoke calmly, but every word hit like a hammer. Greater than, no one is above the law. Not drug dealers. Not gang leaders. And not police officers who abuse their power. Reporters fired questions. Director Monroe, was this a sting operation? She shook her head slightly. No, it was a traffic stop. But it turned into a moment of truth. Later, as the officer was escorted into custody, the department released a public apology, calling his actions unacceptable and criminal. Meanwhile, Monroe returned home, exhausted but composed. Her teenage daughter, Maya, waited at the kitchen table. Mom, she said quietly, you didn't just catch a bad cop. You showed everyone what real justice looks like. Monroe smiled faintly, brushing her daughter's hair back. That's the job, honey. Protect the innocent, even when the guilty wear a badge. The camera zooms out slowly. The faint glow of city lights outside the window. The sound of sirens fading in the distance.